Hello and welcome. I'm Pooja Sarkar, and you're listening to the podcast from the bookshelves of Forbes India. While the season has changed and the virus is yet to go from our lives, there is one thing that we still do, and that is order online. Now, today's book is called Bezonomics by the award-winning journalist Dumaine, who is living in the countryside these days. He's here to talk about his book, which focuses on the rise of Amazon, the artificial intelligence flywheel it has become, what future holds, and of course, the impact of Amazon on the small sellers, workers working in the warehouses, the kind of conditions that they work in, and there are various tidbits and smaller stories around the entire company. He also talks about the entire S-suit and the 6-page form that one has to bring in to pitch a new idea if they want to pitch to the company. There are many beautiful stories, and I can't wait to speak to Brian. So thank you so much for being on our show. And I wanted to first start with you've done more than 200 interviews, and it's taken nearly 2 years to write this book. So I wanted to understand, where did the idea come about, and what has been your learning about Amazon while writing this book?
Sure. Well, I wrote my book Bezonomics because I realized that Amazon as a company represents where business is headed in the future. They've created, in my mind, the most sophisticated digital platform in the world. And they're using it to expand not only in e-commerce, but in other businesses as well, whether it's advertising, finance, media, and shipping as well. And I thought that the world should know how they operate, because a lot of companies are going to have to compete with them. And consumers should know how they operate, because there's good things about them and there are bad things about them. So I thought, let's get inside the corporation and find out how it really operates. And I was fortunate enough to get access to Amazon, and I flew out to Seattle and I spent time in their headquarters, and I interviewed about a dozen of their top executives, as well as many executives who had left Amazon and might have a different view of what was going on inside the company. And I talked to experts in the field and to competitors like Walmart. And it was really a fascinating process because Amazon touches so many different areas of our lives and of our business world. And I just thought, what a great way to talk about where business and society are headed in the future. Amazon's a good proxy for that.
True. The one question that I would like to ask is, what does Amazon really want? Because Amazon started out, I was just reading somewhere that today, that is 6th of July 1994, is the first day Amazon actually started working. So it's actually Amazon's birthday, so to say. And I was just checking Scott Galloway's post on Twitter right now. So I want to understand, it's been like 26 years that they have been in operation. What does Amazon really want? They started out as a bookseller, but they are now into everything that we know, from everything that we own in our house, So what
Right.
does Amazon really want?
Well, the short answer is they're trying to create an operating system for our lives. In other words, they want to digitally connect us to just about everything we do. I mean, that's the amazing thing about Amazon. I mean, some of the big tech companies like Facebook and Google mainly operate in cyberspace, right? They're just online platforms. You chat online, you search online. But with Amazon, they're connecting the physical world to digital. And that's a huge change historically. And what Amazon wants is to be at the center of that. They want to be the hub. They want to be the intelligence that drives all our different behaviors and pastimes, whether we're shopping, whether we're watching movies, streaming music, buying books, whether we're running a business. I mean, Amazon has 2 or 3 million small businesses selling on their sites now. They comprise 58% of all items sold on Amazon.com, which is pretty amazing. Uh, as I mentioned earlier, they're moving into finance. They just inked a deal with Goldman Sachs to lend money to a lot of these entrepreneurs who do sell on their site. They have in India, they have Amazon Pay, which allows small merchants to create a storefront, and customers can order from them through Amazon. It's called Amazon Smart Store, and Amazon handles the website. Amazon handles the payment system. There's a banking reward system that goes with it. So in that sense, Amazon is infiltrating, other retailers as well. So they're this omnivorous organization that through big data, artificial intelligence, and machine learning are slowly enmeshing themselves in our lives.
True. But there's one thing I wanted to understand while I was reading a book. It comes to the lower end of the book, but I wanted to discuss it in the beginning of the conversation about how you had some examples where some smaller retailers got onto the Amazon. You mentioned one of the person, John Morgan, who was from London and who started selling his travel kits and
Right.
yeah, for $35, and then Amazon came in and they saw there's huge amount of spike in his sales and they started selling something similar for $22. And of course then he fell into a problem. Then he goes and he takes a loan from Amazon to run the business again, and the business does well. But when they still see that he's still doing well, and then one fine day Amazon lending stops the lending towards the company and he has to go somewhere else to get the money because he's loaned it at around 12%. So this is a vicious circle that these small sellers are getting into, and it is also killing. Amazon has also been said that it is killing the smaller mom and pop shops. How does this entire ecosystem work out?
Right. Yes, the John Morgan story was fascinating because after I interviewed him a number of times because it was such a fascinating story, but he said despite all that trouble he went through, despite Amazon copying his product, besides Amazon undercutting him on price, despite Amazon taking away his loan, he still loves to sell on Amazon because Amazon has 150 billion Prime members globally. And he says, where else can you reach an audience like that? And I talked to him after I published the book just to see how he was doing. And he said he's still selling on Amazon. His business got killed because it was a travel related business, but he's shifted again and he's selling his pouches for home storage. And whether it works out for him, I don't know. But he said, as a small business person, you just can't not sell on Amazon. I mean, they have so many customers to reach, and they handle all your warehousing and shipping headaches too. I mean, they charge a pretty fee for that, but it takes a lot of onus off of entrepreneurs. Now, you mentioned putting a lot of small businesses out of business, and I mean, I spent a lot of time trying to track down the research on that, and there's no definitive research on Amazon directly putting a lot of small businesses out of business. But what is happening is that small businesses that are simply in a commodity business, they're trying to sell a product at a price, and that's it. They're not going to survive Amazon. I mean, Amazon's better at that than just about anyone in the world. They are more efficient, they are faster, they can have low prices and get you that product in many cases within a day, sometimes even faster. In one instance I talk about in my book, Baseonomics, there was a teenager in Seattle and he ordered a video game and it arrived 8 minutes later from Amazon. I mean, it's hard to beat that if you're a small business, right? So the key, and I have another chapter in my book called How to Amazon Proof Your Business, is you've got to outflank Amazon. You can't compete directly against them if you're a small business. You have to figure out a way around them. And one way to do that is through very personalized customer service. I mean, because Amazon can't really do that on the scale that they operate. And there's a startup in San Francisco called Stitch Fix, and Katrina Lake, who founded the company, collects data on all her customers, and she then customizes the clothes for her customers. And every month you receive a box of clothes from Stitch Fix, and chances are it's in the style you like, and chances are it's going to fit. And you keep whatever you like, and what you don't like, you put it back in the same box, and you just ship it back to Stitch Fix. And that company has done tremendously well. The last time I looked, it was valued at over $1.6 billion US. So there are ways to get around Amazon. Warby Parker is another company that managed to outflank Amazon. It's a startup, and its founders were Wharton School students at the Wharton Business School. And one of them broke his eyeglasses, and he realized it was going to cost $600 or $700 to get a new pair. And he said, that's ridiculous. That's just too much money. And he founded a company based on selling inexpensive eyeglasses. Well, you might say, well, Amazon could do that too. Yes, they could. But what Warby Parker did is they wrapped their business from the very beginning into a social mission. And they said that for every pair of eyeglasses you buy, they will donate a pair to someone in the developing world who really needs those eyeglasses. And that did two things for Warby Parker. One thing was that people want to shop from them. I mean, Amazon's not known for its social consciousness. They're trying to change that now, but no one thinks of Amazon as like this company that's just doing all this good work in the world. But Warby Parker, if you're a customer, you feel good about yourself buying a pair of glasses from Warby Parker because, hey, I'm helping someone in the developing world who really needs a pair of eyeglasses and can't afford them. And the other thing it does is it psychs their employees. Anyone who's worked there for 3 years or more gets a free trip down to Central America, and they can see the programs that Warby Parker has set up there to help people who now can suddenly read or get a job because they have these eyeglasses they couldn't afford before. And that makes the employees very excited to be working for Warby Parker. And you can tell that when you call them up, which I've done many times. I have to admit I'm a Warby Parker customer, but the people are always helpful and they're upbeat because they're proud of where they work, right? And it's kind of hard to feel that way at Amazon. It's so huge, and with 800,000 employees around the globe, it's hard to get a warm and fuzzy feeling about them. So that's another way to get around them. A third way I write about in that chapter is to have products that even Amazon doesn't offer, to sort of have a highly curated selection of products so that you sort of know what you're getting when you go to that site. A good example of that is Williams-Sonoma, which is a kitchen goods company. And when I was doing research for my book Basonomics, I decided, okay, I'm going to type in pots and pans on Amazon. And the number one choice was the set of Remy cookware. And you got 15 different pots for $49. And the product got 2,500 reviews, most of them positive. People were happy with that. But then I went on the Williams-Sonoma site, and I also typed in pots and pans. And on the first page, among other items, came up this cooking pot that was made in France by a company that started in Paris in the 1820s, and it cost $800 for that one pot. And I'm sure it was a really great pot, but that's not something you're likely to find on Amazon. So Williams-Sonoma has found a way to outflank them, and they're now the 13th largest website in the United States. So they've managed to survive in this Amazonian jungle.
True. In fact, I there was this interesting example that you also put about the Goldman Sachs trader who has gone on to set up a shop where he finds the fake reviews.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly. Um, you
I
know,
think Saud Khalifa. Yeah, that's the name of
yes,
the.
yes, Khalifa. He was a fascinating character when I talked to him. You know, what happened to him is he was working at Goldman and he bought a set of exercise weights and they got tremendous reviews. And he got them home and within a day or two, they broke. And he said, "How could this be?" And then he realized that, a lot of the reviews on Amazon are actually counterfeit. I mean, some merchants hire people to write these fake reviews. There are these review mills, and others steal reviews from other merchants, and because reviews are so essential. There's this incredible case that I also reported on, where the seller was selling garden hose nozzles. When the nozzles that you use on your hose when you're watering your garden, and he got hijacked by his website got hijacked by a Chinese company that was selling HD antennas, and Chinese company took over his Amazon page. And at the top of it, they put a picture of an HD antenna. They wrote a description of an HD antenna, but his 500 positive reviews on his garden hose remained there. So people shopping for an HD antenna would see that it got 500 positive reviews, but if they scroll down, they'd realize that those reviews were not about HD antennas, but they're about garden hose nozzles. But they figured out that most consumers don't bother to read the reviews. They just look at how many stars and how many reviews, and they figure, oh, this must be the best one.
True. There's one thing that I wanted to, as part of an extension of the workers that we talked about, there's a lot of stories around the tough working condition in warehouses of Amazon. Of course, it is around the globe about how tough the working conditions are in warehouses, but people especially talk about how difficult it is to work and the kind of salaries that they earn. While you mentioned in the book that this is just a stepping stone and you have to get out, they believe that, you have to get out of that ecosystem after a year or so, but yet there is this whole notion about how difficult the work life is and how stressful the work life is in those warehouses.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Pooja. And I mean, it's a complicated issue. I mean, working in a warehouse, not just at Amazon, but anywhere, it's a tough job. I visited one of Amazon's warehouses. It's very hard, repetitive, mind-numbing work, and these people work long hours. And up until recently, they weren't paid very well. Jeff Bezos came under a lot of pressure from American politicians like Bernie Sanders, who actually proposed a Stop Bezos Act in the United States. And Bezos raised the minimum pay to $15 an hour for his warehouse workers, which is actually double the national minimum wage. It's still not a huge amount of money, but Amazon sees that job as a stepping stone. In other words, they would hope that people don't spend more than a few years at these warehouse jobs for the very reasons I just described. And one of the things they do is they have a educational program, and anyone who's been there for at least a year can go out and train to be a nurse or a truck driver or a data technician. People will use this job as a stepping stone to get to the next level of a job and a career, and to be able to make more money. Now, the bigger problem that I write about in my book, Basonomics, is that almost all of the processes in Amazon's warehouses are automated. Amazon bought this robotics company called Kiva a number of years ago, and they're one of the top robotics companies in the world. And Amazon's been, growing them, investing in them, and applying that technology to their warehouses. The last step for automation in the warehouses is something called picking and stowing. It's when merchandise comes into the warehouse, a human being still has to stow that item in the right cubby hole, and then they have to pick it out of the right cubby hole in order for the item to be put in a box and shipped. Amazon sells an estimated 600 million different products. You imagine the different sizes, shapes, materials of all those products, and that's very hard for a robot hand to distinguish. And so people are still doing those jobs. And, you know, Amazon has about 400,000 frontline workers. Not all of them are, you know, in the warehouses. Some of them are delivery drivers or whatever. But, you know, when the day comes, and I interviewed some startup companies and some robotics professors at MIT, the day comes, and it will, perhaps sooner than we think, when robots can do that picking and stowing job, then the vast majority of those warehouse jobs are going to disappear. I mean, in China, JD.com, which is an online retailer, has a warehouse that ships 200,000 packages a day, and they have 4 employees. So that's where the warehouse world is heading, and that's going to be a huge societal issue. McKinsey issued a report that I cited in my book, Baseonomics, which says under the worst case scenario, by 2030, which is only a decade away, globally, we're going to lose 30% of the workforce to automation. So governments and societies are going to have to figure out how to deal with this dislocation.
And coming to Amazon, there's one line that you've written in the book which says 51% American households attend church, while 52% American houses have Amazon Prime. I found it very interesting when I read the line, and I thought that how big has Amazon become as part of our lives? And there's also one story that you had where this lady, the reporter from Gizmodo, who had blocked all the IP addresses which has anything that is owned by Amazon, and basically 23 million IP addresses were blocked, which included Netflix, Airbnb, and all these big companies that we know, which basically means AWS has a larger control on our lives than we know about it. Yeah, if you could just take the listeners through how big AWS and this entire AI machine learning part of Amazon is.
Yeah, a lot of people don't even know about AWS. That's stands for Amazon Web Services, and it's their cloud computing business. It grew out of Amazon's own computer expertise. They were hiring the best data scientists and engineers to build Amazon.com. And one day Bezos said, well, we've got all this great computer expertise. Why don't we sell it to the outside world? And that's when AWS was born. Today, AWS is the largest cloud computing service in the world. Microsoft's Azure is number 2. It's Amazon's most profitable division. It's got about $10 billion in revenue. And it informs all of what Amazon does. I mean, one of the reasons Alexa is so good and so smart is that, you know, Amazon keeps improving its data expertise. It has AWS, so it's improving it that way. It's continuously hiring more data scientists. I mean, for Alexa alone, Amazon has 10,000 employees working on it. I mean, imagine that, 10,000 employees and figuring out how to make her smarter. And she still has a long way to go on that, believe me. But it just points to how hard it's going to be to compete with Amazon in the future. I mean, a lot of corporations think if they hire a small IT department and hire some AI specialist, and they can just take their traditional way of business and sort of tack on some AI expertise, they'll be okay. But that's not what Amazon is. You know, Amazon did not start as a bookseller back in 1995. It started as a tech platform that just happened to sell books because it was the easiest thing to sell. I mean, they're the same shape, So they're easy to ship. They don't spoil like groceries on the shelves. But Bezos just uses that as a proof of concept, and then it allowed him to expand from there. But it was the digital savvy that the company has that allowed that. And AWS is the culmination of all of that. It's sort of the I guess the digital flagship of Amazon in a way. It just shows their prowess in this field, and I think there's a tremendous amount of growth ahead for AWS. I mean, they're deep into facial recognition technology, which has become very controversial, but the fact remains that there's a huge market out there, and Amazon's going to be one of the leading players in that market, and that's going to help drive growth even beyond retail.
Coming to the Indian context, Amazon is a huge player in Indian market. I mean, there's Amazon, there's Flipkart, and there's this whole war between Amazon and Flipkart, Flipkart is now owned by Walmart. But the biggest thing being that you mentioned in the book also that Amazon has helped a lot of its sellers to start exporting their products outside of India, which also gives them an advantage in a position that nobody else is looking at exports for the businesses. But if we look at the numbers for Amazon in India, they had posted losses of around 7,000 crore, and that is a huge number. How does Amazon have the ability to be able to pump in such huge amount of capital, and how long can they do it, and which can be the winning verticals?
Yeah, no, that is a classic Jeff Bezos move. Throughout the history of Amazon, Bezos has always been willing to take huge losses in the short term in order to gain market share, improve services, and let him end up in a top position in the long term. And he's doing the same thing in India right now. I mean, he's investing heavily. Flipkart is bigger than Amazon in India right now, but Amazon is growing twice as fast as Flipkart in India. And what gives Amazon an advantage in India is its Prime program. And no one else has a program like Prime. And it's what has supercharged Amazon's growth in the US and in the EU. Other companies have these membership programs. If you join us, we might give you, sort of reduced price on shipping, or we'll give you some rewards. But Amazon Prime is something that creates this incredible stickiness with their customers. I think the challenge for Flipkart and for Reliance in India will be trying to match the appeal of the Amazon Prime membership program, because in the States, you mentioned that statistics, more Amazon Prime members than churchgoers in the States, and that's partially because people just love all the benefits that come with being a Prime member.
Finally, before I let you go for today, what do you think, what lies in the future for Amazon? They have this entire space program that he's been heavily invested into. Then there is, they're trying to tie up with cars and see what can happen there. Of course, their phone did not work. The Fire phone did not work.
Right.
But there are a lot of other
Right.
things that the company is really doing. And if you look at a lot of Indian companies also over here, people are trying to copy the model, trying to clone the model and try to become bigger. There's one thing that you interestingly say is the longevity of the plans. It is not just about a 2-3 year program that one has to develop or a product has to be developed. It's the long-term value that one can seek in the products. So where do you think what does the future lie for Amazon?
Well, Pooja, that's a great question. I mean, the company is poised to move in so many different directions. Just as one example, I mentioned earlier finance, they're moving in that direction, advertising, they're building up their online advertising business to compete with Facebook and Google. But one interesting area that I write about in the book is healthcare. Healthcare, at least in the United States, is inefficient and costs too much. And if Amazon's good at anything, it's driving down costs and being more efficient. So you can imagine Amazon, for example, and this has come up during the pandemic, offering in the future some telemedicine services. They already have a program called Amazon Care where they offer telemedicine to their employees in Seattle. And if that works out, I could imagine them offering telemedicine to the public at large. And it's Alexa based. As you know, the Echo is their smart speaker system, but some of the Echoes, the Echo Show, come with a screen. So you could set up a doctor's appointment over Alexa. You have Alexa schedule the doctor's appointment. As a matter of fact, if you happen to be walking around your house and you cough, Alexa has a patent to recognize the sound of a cough, and she might say to you, "Oh, would you like to talk to your doctor?" You see your doctor on the screen, and let's say you have a sore throat, and you have you're worried you have strep throat, and you can order these strep throat test kits from Amazon today. So you'd have them there, you'd take it, you'd say to your doctor, "Yep, I have strep throat." The doctor says, "Well, you need some antibiotics." Well, a few years ago, Amazon acquired PillPack, which is an online pharmacy company. So you could order your antibiotics from PillPack and then they'd come right to your door. So here's a situation where you don't have to go to the doctor's office. You don't have to wait in a crowded waiting room, which is a special concern during these days of the pandemic. You don't have to then go to the pharmacy and stand in line and wait to pick up your medicines and then drive home, all while you're feeling lousy, right? So telemedicine isn't for all ills. There's certainly instances where you should see a doctor in person, and there are economic challenges for doctors, especially dealing with the elderly who aren't good at using technology, and an appointment might actually take longer than it should because people are pushing the wrong buttons on their keyboard, whatever. But it could be a big business for Amazon going into the future, but that's just one of many areas where this company has plans to expand.
Cool. Thank you so much for your time. It was lovely reading your book and speaking to you today.